Good morning and welcome to our webinar and issues forum. I'm Nick Ortiz. I'm the president and CEO of the Greater Bakersfield Chamber of Commerce, and we're very pleased to provide you with today's program and appreciate that our audience has made time to join us this morning. We want to make the best use of your time, so we're going to jump right into our overall program. You'll hear from our incoming chairman of the board, from our mayor, from some of our sponsors, and then also our incredible panel that we've assembled for you today. So without further ado, we're going to get right on with the show. I'd like to introduce a friend and an amazing community and business leader. It's our 2022 chairman of the board, Rick Jaj. Rick and his family own Countryside Corporation, and they really are the epitome of both local business and community leadership. They are very connected, very engaged, and have an amazing story about the perseverance it takes to start and to sustain a family-run small business. So without further ado, to my friend Rick, please take it away.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I am happy to see so many of you could be a part of our first virtual event. I want to start by thanking our president and CEO, Nick Ortiz, for that wonderful introduction, and as well as our entire staff at the Chamber that made this event possible. I am humbled, and it is truly my honor to serve as the 2022 chairman of the board for the Greater Bakersfield Chamber. Countryside, our family business, has been operating for over 30 years in Kern County, and we appreciate the support that the Chamber has given, not just to us, but to all the businesses in our city. Given the current health crisis and the rise of COVID infections affecting our county and state, we decided it is in the best interest of our community to postpone our in-person installation luncheon. We must back our local healthcare community and show that we stand in support of their efforts to keep the city and county safe. But until we can meet in person, I want to virtually thank my predecessor, Derek Jeffrey, for his historic 2 years of service and recognize our members and volunteers for the excellent work they did in 2021. Thank you again for your commitment to this chamber. I believe we must lead by example, and the success of our chamber members is one of our top priorities. Our members are facing significant challenges, ranging from staffing level shortages, supply chain issues, and how to adequately service customers. We are cognizant of these concerns. So to allow our members to be focused on running their businesses during this critical time, we will keep our remarks brief. While our luncheon is rescheduled to March 9th, we want to let you know that our work at this chamber starts today. To my fellow members of our chamber, we are here for you and your continued success in our city. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us, as the chamber is a resource here to support you. Today, we welcome our esteemed panel of statewide leaders who will discuss our economy and directives from Sacramento for the upcoming year. Collectively, we will work together to find a way to move forward, bringing growth and prosperity to our local businesses, and make 2022 a year that you can look back upon with pride. A year that brought progress for our local businesses, a year we made an impact on our local and state policies, and above all else, our members understand that you have found your ally and your champion for your business, the Greater Bakersfield Chamber of Commerce. But before we proceed with our panel, we could not start our year without inviting a wonderful supporter of the Chamber, an advocate for local business here in Bakersfield, a great leader in our community, and a person with unwavering dedication to the success of our city, and also a personal friend, our very own Mayor Kern.
Thank you so much, Rick. Good morning, Bakersfield. I'm glad to be with you this morning. We have a great year ahead. While our community faces challenges, including the continued recovery from the pandemic, I'm so optimistic about Bakersfield's future. I'm very proud of the partnerships we forged with our community organizations like the Chamber. Working together with our local business community, our city has been able to accomplish incredible things. That's not possible without excellent community leaders like your 2022 chair, Rick Jaj. Rick, I so appreciate not only your outstanding leadership in business, but also your big heart for our community. I love watching you and Nitu model for your beautiful daughters acts of caring and generosity for persons in need and for our entire community. Congratulations, Rick, and thank you for all that you and your family do for our community. I'm so extremely pleased that in just a few minutes, we'll hear from a great panel of statewide leaders, including Dee Dee Myers from the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development. We've had the opportunity to welcome Dee Dee to Bakersfield previously, and we look forward to seeing her again very soon. Please stay safe and healthy, Bakersfield. And now I'll turn it over to our President and CEO, Nick Ortiz.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it and appreciate all of your support for the Chamber and what we do on behalf of our members. You know, we say here at the Chamber that we preach that we're staff powered but member driven. We need our members to guide this organization and support our initiatives. And we appreciate all of the sponsor support for today's event, as they ensure that the Chamber has the fiscal foundation necessary to support our work in building something better. At this time, I'd like to thank our presenting sponsors, Kaiser Permanente and Adventist Health, for their support. And I'd like to invite Maybelle Liquigan, Senior Vice President and Area Manager for Kaiser Permanente, and Daniel Wolcott, the President of Kern County Care Delivery for Adventist Health, to make some comments. Mabel and Daniel, please take it away.
Good morning. I'm Daniel Wolcott, and I'm the president of Adventist Health Care Delivery here in Kern County, which includes our 3 hospitals in Bakersfield, Delano, and Tehachapi. Perhaps the biggest understatement that will be made today is the impact on healthcare personnel and delivery that this pandemic has caused during the last 2 years. I continue to be amazed at the incredible resilience and courage and brilliance of those healthcare workers who continue to take care of patients during this time. And it's not just the patients who have COVID. It includes all the patients who access care at care locations across our community. At Adventist Health, we call this work sacred work. It's sacred because the interactions between our caregivers and every patient and family member is an opportunity to make a difference in someone's life. And we take that calling seriously. I couldn't be more proud of the partnership and collaboration we have with Kaiser Permanente to serve their members here at Adventist Health. And we look forward to the day when we can all come in person and share support of businesses and leaders across Kern County. On behalf of Adventist Health, we thank you for the opportunity to gather, even if it is just virtual. Thank you, Nick, and I'm going to hand it off to Maybelle.
Thanks, Daniel. Good morning, everyone. My name is Maybelle Liquigan. I am currently the Senior Vice President for Kaiser Permanente, Kern County. I have had the pleasure of working here in Kern County for the last 6 months. And I have to say, my first week of the job was our 3rd surge in July. So how can you forget, right? And to top that off, we are currently experiencing the 4th surge. And I'm just, like Daniel said, in awe and amazed in how the community comes together, especially in a difficult and challenging times like this. So I am very confident, and Daniel is a great partner, that at the end of the day, we'll get through this again. With that being said, I'm very happy that we have been one of the longtime co-sponsors of this luncheon, again, in partnership with Adventist Health. And Kaiser Permanente truly supports the Chamber's decision to postpone full celebration until March. As we know, safety is our priority. Personally and professionally, we all know how much COVID has heavily impacted all of us. So I just really want to make sure that as Kaiser Permanente, our mission is to make sure that we deliver the highest quality of care to our members, but at the same time to the communities that we serve. We encourage you to please stay safe, continue masking, distancing, and most importantly, vaccination is the key. And if recommended, please get your booster shot. And with that being said, I'm really honored and very excited to be part of this panel discussion. And I'm sure that you will find that today's discussion is going to be very informative. So thank you again. I'm very thrilled to be part of Kern County.
Thanks, Maybell and Daniel. Really appreciate both of your leadership. And please, I think I speak on behalf of everybody in the Kern County business community that we appreciate all of the work of our healthcare workers. So please extend that to your staffs. So now on to our main event, our panel discussion. So as we get rolling here, let me just bring up the bios for our star-studded panel. So as the world's 5th largest economy, California faces both serious challenges, but also important opportunities. And we have this panel discussion ready to talk about what's in store for state policy and the economy in the year going forward. So our panel includes Jennifer Barrera. Jennifer assumed the role of President and Chief Executive Officer of the California Chamber of Commerce on October 1st. A member of the Cal Chamber team since 2010, Jennifer stepped into the top position after serving as Executive Vice President, overseeing the development and implementation of policy and strategy for the organization. Barrera is well known for her success rate with the Cal Chamber's annual list of job killer legislation, especially in her particular area of expertise, labor law. Fun fact about Jennifer, she is a CSUB alum, earning her BA there before earning her Juris Doctorate from California Western School of Law. Our next panelist is Dee Dee Myers. Dee Dee serves as a senior advisor to Governor Newsom and director of the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, or GoBiz. Prior to joining the Newsom administration, Myers served as executive vice president of worldwide communications and public affairs for Warner Brothers. Prior to that, she was a managing director of the Glover Park Group. Myers is well known for her role as White House press secretary during President Bill Clinton's first term, where she was the first woman to hold the position. Myers is also a well-known political analyst, commentator, and best-selling author, and served as a consultant on the Emmy Award-winning drama series, The West Wing. And then we're joined by one of our local leaders, Greg Bielli, and Greg is with Tejon Ranch Corporation. Greg joined Tejon Ranch in September of 2013 and has more than 30 years experience in real estate, land acquisition, development, and financing. Before leading Tejon Ranch, Bielli worked for Newland Communities, one of the world's largest and most successful master planned community developers in the country. Mr. Bielli serves as the second vice chair of the California Chamber of Commerce, a vice chair of the Southern California Leadership Council, and served as a member of the Scottsdale City Council in the 1990s, and brings that local government as well as development experience to his critical roles. So let's get going here. As we did the preamble and the lead in, the top of mind, the elephant in the room is of course the pandemic. I think many of us expected 2022 to be the beginning of the end of the pandemic. However, we're now facing record-breaking cases throughout the state. The news just yesterday was that the state had added 1 million cases over the course of the last week. In Kern County, we are the same, reaching the highest levels of case rates since the beginning of the pandemic. So given the challenges, whether they're supply chains, operations, workforce, how are we going to turn this corner? How are we going to keep the economy open and business running? And I'm just going to say jump ball. Whoever wants to go first can take it.
Well, I'll jump in here, Nick. Obviously, the state has spent a lot of time and energy, and the governor spent a lot of time and energy on this. And as you noted, we all hoped we'd be past this by now, but we're not. But I think, a couple of things. The governor has no interest, as does no one in the state, of shutting down the economy again. And there doesn't appear to be any reason that should happen. As you know, there's, certainly the state has been incredibly aggressive from a health perspective. And right now we're doing something akin to 500,000 tests per day, in addition to, widespread availability of vaccines and boosters. In order to keep the economy open, one of the governor's top commitments is to keep schools open. And so in addition to requiring teachers to either be boosted or vaccinated or tested or vaccinated, and eventually students will face the same requirement, he provided millions of tests to schools, more than 10 million tests to schools, in order to try to keep schools open and daycare centers open so that people can go to work. And then there's just the ongoing public health guidance that the state has provided, from things like mandatory indoor masking to other guidance that really encourages people to get vaccinated, get boosted when you're eligible, and do everything we can to keep the economy moving while investing in particularly small businesses over the last year and in the current budget to make sure that those businesses can not only survive, but thrive going forward and recover. And so I'm happy to talk more about that, but I'm sure the others have thoughts about pandemic land.
Yeah, thank you. Jennifer or Greg?
Yeah, I'll jump in just quickly to kind of add to Dee Dee's comments. I think we're in a different place as a business community than we were when we faced these surges before. We have more resources available. We have a better understanding of this virus and how we can navigate and continue to be successful and competitive in the business industry. One of the greatest talents of our business community is their ability to shift and pivot, as everybody says, but also to innovate and figure out ways in which to maintain their operations. And I think the business community has done that. Obviously, in certain sectors, it's been more challenging than others, but with the opportunity with remote work and shifting their workforce and already having that experience, having done it before when the virus first hit, I think this surge has been a little bit easier for businesses to deal with, not necessarily that they welcome it, of course, but easier to navigate through it than we have seen before. And then, of course, with the governor's commitment not to shut down business, but learn how to kind of deal with this pandemic has been a welcome remarks to a lot of the business community at this point with this surge.
Well, from Nick, from the perspective of operating the business out here through the very beginning of the shutdowns here at the ranch, we've been essential. We're one of the essential businesses with our ag business, with our distribution business. So we've operated throughout it. Now, the retail side of ours has taken a hit, and the outlet operation had to be shut down because of the early stages. But using one of the slogans of my alma mater, the University of Arizona, you just bear down and get through it. And I think that's what we're doing. I think the business, I actually am very encouraged that the public policy makers have focused not only on the public health focus of it, but have also focused on the economy. And I think we've learned that, keeping the schools open, keeping the businesses open. You know, California is now moving, and I think that direction that we've adjusted and we keep adjusting. And, you know, even going to Zoom here, but we're all adapting. But we're all trying to keep our employees safe. Health, you know, the health is number one of our employees. So let's don't put the risk out there. But as the state and local government adapt to regulations, we adapt and we try and keep everything moving. So I do think in the sense of these variances, and obviously the health experts are the ones that should comment, but they seem to be, you know, a lessening of the severity. I know the hospitals are still having a big challenge, but getting that common message out there from the public policy makers, it really helps. Right now, we've had fragmented messages, and that's very difficult to implement in the private sector when you get the different messages coming from different experts. But you just continue to bear through it. And I think that, you know, 2022, we've been through it for 2 years. We're adapting to it. I think there's some unique things, though. There's some opportunities with our employee base, the remote work or the folks that are in different opportunities, and we need to adjust to that. But I hopefully that addresses, I'm more optimistic now going through.
Thank you, Greg. So speaking of optimism, you know, Dee Dee, I think part of your role when you were appointed was really about changing the narrative around doing business in California. You know, we have some experience with that in Kern County, as the mayor and Greg and others have been involved with. You know, we are actively trying to change the image, the internal and external impressions of the Bakersfield Kern region. And so in your opinion, you know, as you think about, you know, how you address that, is that challenge only one of messaging, or are there reforms and policies that will be necessary to support business growth in the state?
Well, you know, it has to be both, right? I mean, as a longtime communications professional, I learned the hard way that you can't create good, sustainable messaging if you have a bad product. It's the old, you can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig. So the state needs to both have good policy, good fundamentals to support a robust business climate. And then we need to make sure that both our businesses and our consumers understand about that. And so I think we continue to have fantastic fundamentals in California, from a consumer base of 40 million people. We have unprecedented diversity of industry. We have the best higher ed in the world, including schools like Cal State Bakersfield. We have our incredible climate and natural resources. We have our GDP growth in the 5 years prior to the pandemic was over 5%, which was a full point higher than the rest of the country, which was in, quite good economic times. We're an innovation economy. We have the most influential, fastest growing businesses. We have the lion's share of new capital. 53% of venture capital came to California last year. You know what Texas had? 2%. You know what Florida had? 2%. So the idea that somehow Miami or Austin is the next Silicon Valley is wishful thinking. They would love to be, they're not. But so that said, we have to support that. We can't just rest on our laurels and expect that we'll continue to have the same kind of robust innovation economy if we don't invest in it. And that's why you've seen, particularly in the last 2 years, investing in not just, Newsom's entire term, but in particular, the last 2 years, we've seen a lot of investment in, as I said, in not only helping businesses and others get through, but in making longer term strategic investments to make sure that we continue that innovation economy. So this year, that includes things like restoring the R&D tax credit and the net operating loss carry forward, paying down the uninsurance trust fund. I know that's important to Jen and the chamber, but we've also invested a tremendous amount in everything from zero emissions vehicle and climate transition to other business propositions, small and medium-sized business investments, from more small business COVID relief grants to tax conformity for the federal restaurant restoration program, and things that we think will be helpful. But we're on top of that, those short and medium term measures, we're investing in ongoing transition, right? Last year it was the SURF, the Economic Resilience Fund, $600 million to help California's now defined as 13 regions to transition not only through the pandemic, but towards the industries, integrated economic development that brings in all of the different sectors and all the different stakeholders to look and say, what does our future look like? How do we grow our economies in ways that are sustainable and just and robust? And here in Bakersfield, you guys have created one of the models for that in B3K. And when we talk about that transition, I know it's particularly complicated for places like Kern County. That's why, this budget includes things like $450 million in a local government budget sustainability fund to look at those local governments that will lose revenue and make sure that they can continue to provide the services that people expect and need. We're investing $83 million in CSU Bakersfield's Energy Innovation Center, again, focusing on that innovation economy, and another $50 million to support the CSU University Farms. And so a lot of those kinds of investments, which are specific and regional, but also contribute to this ongoing innovation economy. So that then becomes not only the policy, Nick, but to your question, the message. We don't just talk the talk, we're walking the walk. And we want California to be the innovation capital of not just the country, but the world. And we need to put our money where our mouth is and put our policies where our mouth is. And it doesn't mean we don't have a lot more work to do, but we're trying to manage both sides of that equation every day.
Thank you. So you mentioned the budget, and I know you kind of covered some of the things that are in there. I mean, the unemployment insurance, the tax credits, obviously the great and welcome news here about the investment in Cal State University Bakersfield. Just interested in, Jennifer, in your thoughts on the budget and how that kind of relates to improving the economic competitiveness of your members, which, largely are some of our largest and smallest businesses. You, like us, have the full gamut.
Yes, definitely. There's a lot of things to be happy about in the budget for businesses, and Dee Dee just mentioned a few, but I'll go into a little bit more detail. The R&D tax credits, or the tax credits and the net operating losses, that's a pretty significant financial relief for a lot of businesses that they can start taking advantage of this year. The governor's office and the legislature had to suspend the use of those credits and the net operating losses when we're facing a potential deficit as a result of COVID, and those have been suspended for the last couple of years. And so to have those reinstated and allow businesses who have suffered losses over the past couple of years to be able to start claiming those losses that's welcome relief. And it really is an investment into our businesses. And so the business community was really thrilled to see that as a part of the governor's budget proposal that was released. The unemployment insurance debt that we're facing. Of course, this isn't going to solve the debt completely. We have about a $20 billion deficit right now that we're going to have to start repaying on as employers this upcoming year back to the federal government in order to start paying down that debt. But that $3 billion payment that the governor has proposed as a part of his budget will really limit the worst of the worst that we would see at the back end with regards to these tax increases. And so it is a welcome relief to see a commitment to paying down that debt. And as we continue to hopefully have budget surpluses ongoing, to continue to see a commitment that we will help resolve that debt so employers aren't taxed at a higher rate as we move forward. So that's really a positive sign. The small business relief that Dee Dee mentioned as a part of the budget to have tax conformity with some of the federal relief that our restaurants and other small businesses receive to make sure that they aren't taxed here at the state level when they receive that federal relief is important. There is small business relief with regards to the grants that were offered last year as a result of COVID to put more funding into those grants for those small businesses that weren't able to attain it last year. Fee waivers, new tax credits, specifically with regards to climate change, and really, as Dee Dee said, putting their money where their mouth is, right? We all see that we're going to be transitioning and we're in a moment of transition. Specifically, of course, Kern County is facing that with climate change and moving into green energy and clean energy. And the governor is incentivizing those, that innovation, the new developments in the technology by really putting out some tax credits for companies who move in that direction. So again, supportive of the business community and moving forward. Those are some of the highlights that I wanted to mention, but there is a lot of positive things that are in this budget that we're hopeful to see the legislature ultimately pass as we go through this legislative year.
Thanks, Jennifer. So Greg, I mean, you're intimately involved. I mean, part of your business at the ranch is, you know, the go and get, the bringing businesses to California or getting them to think about siting here. I mean, what are your thoughts on economic competitiveness in the state and, you know, how we can do a better job on both the policy and the messaging?
Well, I think, you know, the first place is for everyone, even the Sacramento folks and Dee Dee, you know, Kern County is the place that California works. The business works here. And that's the nice thing about Kern County. I can't brag enough when I travel around the state or go to other places of how we can get things done here, whether Bakersfield or Kern County. So I think, you know, we put in place, and a lot of people have worked very hard on this B3K effort. I can't, Nick and everybody that has put effort into this. This is an amazing effort, and it's a collaborative effort. It is not, you know, crammed down. It's been growth oriented. It's dealing with the transition of the policies that Sacramento is sending their way to Kern County and Bakersfield. And we're diversifying. We are looking at manufacturing. We're expanding the aerospace. We're looking at other opportunities for industry efforts here. And that's been homegrown and been talked about for years, but it's been a foundation. So I feel real good about that. We've done the incentive programs through Kern County, and Bakersfield has those. We're attracting those folks here. The labor pool here is outstanding. I mean, as far as, you know, folks that are hardworking, that have come out of the, you know, ag fields or oil fields, and they're in these distribution centers and manufacturing, and you hear nothing but bragging. I had one of our distribution managers being moved to a place down in Southern California. And I said, how are the employees down there? And he said, nothing like Kern County. So, I mean, it's just the bragging of the people that work real hard here, the business climate that's here. I would encourage on the state surplus issues and all the different programs that are being created, infrastructure is key. Infrastructure, water infrastructure. We can build a stadium and give a CEQA exemption to an arena, but we can't give a CEQA exemption to Sites Reservoir or a water facility, storage facility during a drought. It doesn't make sense to me. Having this time with surpluses and looking at our tax structure. Some opportunities there that if we have these surpluses, we've always been frustrated about our tax structure in the state, people leaving the state, businesses leaving the state. Is this an opportunity to reevaluate that tax structure? So As Kern County keeps its pioneering and changing and going through it, I hope the state looks at those issues also, candidly.
Thank you. So I think everyone's mentioned this issue, which is the subject of the state's climate policy and energy. And those, as all have noted, are of particular interest to us here in Kern County. I once heard the Governor Newsom, speak and describe, kind of the continuum of folks who have had to grapple with this issue. That Governor Schwarzenegger, in approving AB 32, focused on the what are we doing? What do we need to combat in climate change? Governor Brown proselytized about the why it was important. And now I think the Newsom administration has the toughest part of it, the how. How do we accomplish some of these very audacious goals, as the governor calls them? So how can we ensure both energy reliability and affordability while also meeting the state's climate goals? And I think, Dee Dee, you kind of touched on this in some of the budget pieces, but also what does that mean for the future of a region like Kern?
Well, it is, we are facing a kind of a longer term transition, right? And so we're going to need to focus on both the technology and solution side and also the workforce side. And so, there's a lot of investments in energy related technology, everything from zero emission vehicles to additional battery storage to new kinds of energy. There's a new tax credit in the budget that's $350 million for over 3 years for clean energy, 2 different tax credits for clean energy investments, basically. And there's some innovative new programs there to make sure that all Californians benefit from the extraction of things like lithium and Lithium Valley, that there's not only a royalty, but that in some instances a warrant attached to tax credits that will then be repaid back to the people of California in ways to support things like worker training and infrastructure development to support those regions, right? So that the rising tide really does lift all boats. And so on the GoBiz side, obviously we're managing the market strategy around ZEV. We also deal with things like the supply chain, and the governor set aside $2.3 billion to invest in the supply chain, which not only to make it more resilient, but to make it greener, right? So that, and providing things like funds for zero emission drayage trucks at the port and zero emission port equipment, and then a training center at the same time, $120 million to invest in a training center so that workers can be trained to be for these new technologies in the future, for the electrification of goods movement. And so again, I think we have to invest on both sides. How do we manage how do we incentivize the new technology, hydrogen, batteries, et cetera, that will allow us to get there? And how do we make sure that transition benefits our workforce? And again, that's both on those larger kind of broader statewide initiatives, but also in those regional initiatives like SURF, like the fund for regional governments, to make sure we can help them backfill the losses in their own budgets as they lose revenue from things like oil extraction. So again, a holistic approach. One that is very mindful and very focused on how do we get through this in a way that, again, provides benefits for all of our people.
Jennifer, Greg, thoughts? Jennifer, I mean, you represent some of the largest companies as they've engaged with the state and tried to shape some of these policies over, since 2006, since the AB 32 was passed.
Yeah, I think one of the key components as we go through this transition is something that you mentioned in the beginning question, Nick, is affordability. California's energy cost rates is a challenge, and it contributes to the overall cost of living in California, which we know is higher for many reasons, but also, deals with our competitiveness and our ability to maintain the businesses that we have here. Our residents, we want to obviously maintain that cost of living. And so as we look towards, moving into this green, clean energy space, and we're certainly advancing there, we always have to keep the cost factor as a part of the conversation, because we want to get there in the most efficient and cost efficient manner that we can. And from our perspective, it really comes down to making sure that basically everything is on the table when we talk about how we get to our emission goals, how we get there with regards to our carbon neutrality, that we keep all potential technologies on the table and really allow the private sector, again, to do what they do best, which is adapting, innovating and figuring out the best technology we can to really achieve those climate goals that we have here in California. We know California wants to be a leader in the climate space, and they can be a leader, but in order to lead, you have to do something that the rest of the country will follow. And so again, we really need to make sure that as we lead in this space, we do it in a cost-effective manner that brings everybody to the table and really allows the private sector to engage and do what they do best.
Yeah, Nick, to tag on to Jennifer's point, most of you have read in the Times, LA Times, and everywhere else, the ranch recently did a major settlement agreement with Climate Resolve.
Mhm.
And it was recognized, obviously, as a Centennial being a net neutral community. And it's, we learned a lot through those negotiations with the folks at Climate Resolve. And what I would encourage as we go through this, they learned a lot. And to Jennifer's point of affordability, it's the dialogue. I learned through those conversations that the dialogue between us and them, we were both marching towards a goal. But as they learned more about our challenges, they adapted towards us. And as we learned more about their challenges, we adapted. So it's a simple thought, is as opposed to dictating, it's the conversation that really actually helps to come to a point of it's between us and our friends at, at 5 Point, the, Valencia project. We've got two of the biggest agreements that are done in the state of California in our effort here in the conversation. But the thing is, it is going to pass on cost to the consumer because of the cost of the housing product to address these issues. One thing that we could have done, I hope the state looks at, is these offsets and how we can deal with markets for these offsets to be more affordable. I can tell you buying offsets in California are very expensive because of the limited projects. Buying offsets across the United States is cheaper. And buying offsets internationally by buying into projects is even way cheaper from the economic standpoint. So creating those markets within California to help California, and yeah, climate change goes across the Colorado River and goes everywhere else, but I think we need to create markets and projects within California that will be more affordable. And I bet you will get more people to buy in to these concepts through that type of dialogue.
Yeah. I mean, I think, we couldn't be in Kern County and kind of show our faces if we didn't, just say, oil and gas and agriculture is more than an industry sector in this region. It is really, I think as integral to our culture, to our understanding of who we are, as movie making is to Hollywood, as the Silicon Chip is to Silicon Valley. And so, as we talk about and think about the transition, we think about it almost in those industry sectoral workforce development terms. And in Kern County, that ingrained history, that ingrained DNA of, for generations, my family worked in agriculture, my family worked in oil and gas, is a part of who we are. So, as we think about, just that landscape, Dee Dee, and not to put you too much on the spot, but as we think about that landscape and that scenario, to Jennifer's point, when we've looked at B3K, when we've looked at the energy sector, one of the areas that we've talked about as, ripe for development, both for the state and then as a way, keeping this very vital industry going, is carbon management. And so, can you talk about, where the state stands on that particular technology, and just to Jennifer's point of let's keep all the options on the table. Let's keep all the weapons in the arsenal.
Right. You mean carbon capture in particular? Yeah.
Yes.
I think, first of all, Nick, I think you make a really good point about oil and gas being more than an industry in Kern County and in the region, right? And what it means to the communities that have built good lives for so many people. The world is moving away, right? That is inevitable and unstoppable. And I think everybody recognizes that. But how can we be respectful to the past, to the history of communities and people there? And ag is evolving too, although we're never leaving ag behind. And I think that's a challenge, and one that I think the state is really aware of. How can we do this in a way that brings communities along and that includes those perspectives and the community's manifest destiny. How do you control and shape your own what the world will look like going towards a clean energy economy? And so that's one of the reasons things like SURF are really important and really important to the governors. Like, these are regional economic development initiatives, right? That bring, and Kern County is its own region because it has its own particular challenges in this process. And we're going to, I think what we'll see is what we're going to try to align more of that regional development. There's a lot of money floating around, as we know. We want to make sure that that gets used effectively and efficiently and provides real results for the communities that are most affected. So, but again, so I think starting with SURF, like, make sure that that table is broad and inclusive and reflects, really a wide range of people whose futures are on the line, and they should be able to shape their own future. And so I think we're very committed to doing that. And just more generally to the carbon capture question, I think that, our approach at this point is all of the above, right? I mean, so it's going to include wind, which is obviously, and solar, which have great potential in the Kern region. Additional battery storage, hydrogen. Hydrogen is a really exciting, a little further off. I think Tesla and Elon Musk accelerated the battery ZEV product a lot, but one of the things, as we all know, that the oil companies like about hydrogen is that the distribution model is the same, right? So you can repurpose a lot of jobs to move hydrogen around, and you can run large industrial facilities with it. So all of the above: carbon capture, wind, solar, battery storage, which we're moving forward with, and I think it's pretty exciting. And doing things like, can we bring some of our supply chains closer to home through things like lithium production in California to cathode production to battery manufacturing, to bring those high road manufacturing jobs back to California would be really exciting. So all the above, communities involved, respecting the past, trying to create a future that brings us all together and moves us all forward.
Thank you. So just a couple more questions. I'm sorry, I thought I heard some crosstalk, but just a couple more questions and we'll close out. So, housing and homelessness. At the beginning of 2020, before we knew we had a pandemic, the governor spent his entire state of the state talking about housing and homelessness. We're obviously seeing throughout the state these, we're not just breaking records in terms of, COVID, we're breaking records in terms of the price of housing, breaking records in terms of a number of people who are homeless, who are largely unsheltered. We are not immune to that in Kern County. One of the things that we always talk about in Bakersfield and Kern is our affordability. I mean, it's one of our vaunted, selling points, and we're kind of losing that at this point. I mean, what action, what can we expect from the state, and, what do businesses need from the state to address homelessness and develop that housing stock that keeps an area like our region affordable and then allows the rest of the state to grow? I'm going to give Greg the first crack at this.
Oh, you got my issue. I love it. And I try and make things simple, Nick, as you know, and it's a supply debate. That's all it is. We're as a state, we address policies dealing with the demand side, rent control, affordable housing units in a project. You name the subsidy of down payments, that's all on the demand side. This is a supply issue, period. And what we have done in this state, and Jennifer knows that, us at the Cal Chamber have even put in a housing ad hoc committee to deal with this, to take it as a responsible neutral party for the governor and for the legislature to deal with, because housing is so critical to economic development. Southern Cal leadership that I'm co-chairing this year with Governor Davis, housing is a big issue. It's a supply issue. We were a couple of years ago, we had the studies from everyone that came out and said, McKinsey came out 3.5 million homes behind. Well, now after 4 years, guess what? We've only built 90 to 100,000 homes a year in the state each year. I remember, Dee, when I sat across the table from the lieutenant governor running for office one time, and he said to me, he said that he was going to go 300 to 400,000 homes a year. And I said, Lieutenant Governor, how are you going to do that? He says, well, CEQA reform. And I grinned, and he looked over at this smart aleck kid with a grin on his face or whatever, and said, well, and he said, why are you grinning? I said, well, CEQA reform is that third rail of California politics that no one wants to touch. I said, what I would do is if you want to build 300,000 to 400,000 homes a year, plaster it on every agency in your executive branch and the forehead of every agency head. Do not promulgate one more rule, regulation, or statute that does not get me 300,000 to 400,000 homes a year. I could go on and on with regards to housing, and it is creeped its way up to Bakersfield. It's mainly the coastal issues has been an issue. This infill policy of the state is not the only solution. It can't be the only solution, especially post-pandemic, where people can live in a community like Bakersfield, work remotely and not have to go in. These larger greenfield developments that no one likes to talk about, like we're doing here at the ranch, these master plans of 500 units or more. Now ours are 12,000, and 19,000 units, but you can address trades issues in these. You can address proper fire protection in these larger master plans. You can go after a number of state policy issues, GHG, climate, look at Valencia, look at what we did at Centennial in our agreements. If you get the scale, we can make a dent in the supply side. If we don't, Nick, there is not a real solution to move this needle. It takes courage. It is a political courage issue to have CEQA reform that really is CEQA reform, that you're not only dealing with the legislative side, but the courts streamlining some of that. Those are courageous conversations that I know are difficult, but there are folks in the state that are willing to step up. And I know that there are trade union folks that are willing to step up too, and so to get it to the point, if we want to support the middle class and lower income class, it's home ownership. Because guess what? We've all enjoyed the appreciation of our homes, our appreciation moving us up that net worth in our economic ladder by home ownership, and depriving people in California of that is really a problem as far as the growth of our state and our workforce going forward. So we need to. So thank you for letting me be the first one on that.
There you go.
I'm sorry, Dee Dee and Jennifer, for getting on my bandwagon so far. But Jennifer hears all the time from me. So.
I'll just follow up with Greg's comments. I mean, he's obviously the housing expert and has a great perspective on it. But I will just, double down on the workforce issue, that it just creates such a challenge for our businesses with their workforce, as the housing options are more limited. The affordability is a challenge, and you have employees who cannot reside near the locations where they're working. Yes, remote work has alleviated some of that. We're hopeful that the remote work continues to be an option in the future, given the demand by the workers, but that doesn't work for everyone. And as we have housing options that are unaffordable, it really does put an impact on our workers and our shortages that we're experiencing for businesses. And so it is a growing concern, just not from the home ownership, but from the workers' perspective. And then of course, it all includes the emissions, and when you have longer commutes, what that does with regards to our emission goals. So it is something that needs to be dealt with. I agree with Greg. It's definitely a supply issue that the state really does need to address.
Yeah, and first of all, thank you for your comments. I grew up in Valencia back in the day, so I'm very familiar with Tejon Ranch, Newhall Ranch, and grew up in a Newhall Ranch house. And I did read, Greg, the piece about what you guys have done and how you've worked with the environmental community, and I was very inspired by what you guys were able to accomplish. Right, it was a win-win and provides the opportunity that you spoke to. As I've traveled around the state in the last year in this job, the number one thing I hear from businesses about obstacles to growth and investment is the cost of housing. And so I hear you on that, and it's really hard. One of the challenges, as you all know, is it's not just if the state could implement policies that could make it better. Maybe that would be easier. But there are local jurisdictions and overlapping authorities, and it's really hard. But we have to do it. I agree. We have to find a way. Fire is one of the huge concerns, but you guys Greg made an incredible investments in fire resilience, and I think in a very compelling way. But I think that is a huge problem, as you know. So we have laws and regulations that make it complicated. We have a global warming and the fire situation, which makes it hard. And we just need to continue to scratch forward on it, because there's almost nothing more important. And of course, so the net effects of it are not just in obstacles to business investment and growth, but we see the homelessness. And I think, Nick, you were even saying in Bakersfield, you've seen a rise. And so obviously the governor's investing a lot of resources in that, $12 billion in last year's budget, a couple billion more in this to clean up and provide the resources to move people from the streets with the services that they need into permanent, transitional and permanent housing. And so I think that's another component of it that's important. But I think we hear you. It's not my primary responsibility, as you know, but it is a secondary because of the effect on the economy and something that we talk about every single day. So love additional ideas from you guys going forward. My door is always open. I know Jennifer and I have talked a little bit about it, but Greg, this is your business, and so we need to continue this conversation.
Thank you, Dee Dee. Appreciate it.
Oh,
We are just about at time. And so I have one final question. And so this is the trick question of our session here. But first off, I just wanted to express our appreciation, not only for your willingness to be here virtually, but up until last week, your willingness to come to Bakersfield, Dee Dee and Jennifer, and meet with our folks and be here, and hope to host you eventually here in Bakersfield. So, here's our question. As Greg said, Kern County is an area, sometimes that gets overlooked, but also has a lot of advantages and has a lot going for it. What is one thing that the rest of the state can learn from Bakersfield and Kern County?
I'll jump in.
Sure.
As Nick mentioned before, Kern County is my hometown. It's where I grew up, and I could not say more about the education system in Kern County and what a great education system it is. I obviously attended Cal State Bakersfield, but I also attended the junior college, Bakersfield College there. And so I couldn't applaud it more, and how well prepared I was moving through my education into law school, and then ultimately through my career with the foundation that the education system in Bakersfield provided me. And so I would just applaud the education system in Bakersfield and say that the rest of the state obviously has replicated it in different regions, but it really is something that the community should be proud of. And certainly I've benefited from it. I could add additional things to be proud of from Kern County as my hometown, but I'll leave it at that and let the others weigh in.
Well, I think you'll have a university president and a community college chancellor doing cartwheels over that observation. Greg or Dee Dee?
Go ahead, Dee Dee.
I think what we learn from you guys every day is a sort of sense of resilience, that this is a community that's very community focused, right? That cares about the community, the individuals in that community, and is in it for the long haul, and is going to figure out how to move forward in the face of changes that are way beyond your control. And so I think that's very admirable, and how the community has come together to forge new paths. And that's why things like B3K are a model for other parts of the state. And so I think there's there's a lot of attention being paid to what you're doing at the state level, and a lot of people not just investing in you, but rooting for you. So thank you for that. Thank you.
Greg, you're a transplant, and we converted you, I think.
You converted me, yes, you did. I think, we have so many attributes that are positives, whether it's the education, the healthcare, our aerospace program stretching on to the East Kern side and everything. And the energy opportunities that we have, the resilience has been mentioned. I want to thank Dee Dee and the state for supporting us with B3K. Yeah. We have been very appreciative of the positive support that comes out of Sacramento on this effort. You're not only on the financial support, clearly with our support with Brookings and everything else, but it's the cheerleading support. We have a lot to do. We're doing it. We're taking it on. It's locally grown and it's locally led. And so I think that is something that hopefully other parts of the state can replicate. And maybe that's something we can hand off once we get farther along in this process. And you can use us as an example. But thank you, everybody. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you. And thank you to our panel, and thank you to all of our audience for joining us and staying with us. As I mentioned, we could not do any of these events without our sponsors. So just wanted to recognize our platinum sponsors, Adventist Health and Kaiser Permanente, our gold sponsors, Chevron and Valley Strong Credit Union, our silver sponsor, HealthNet LLC, and our bronze sponsors, Daniels Phillips Vonenbach, Eagle Mountain Casino, Golden Empire Transit District, Grimway Farms, and Varner Brothers. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to our panelists, and have a wonderful day.